So we've gotten to our next principle. Principle 14, talk back. What does it mean to talk back? Well, you can do something like the visualizations that we talked about earlier in video 2 as preparation. So, for example, while you're reading, you can kind of pause and imagine the author in front of you and ask them some questions and actually take the time in real time to go through a full dialogue with the author. You can let yourself spool out a full argument with the author about some element of what you're reading. And then you could write down the dialogue you imagine. As you talk back to your author and even write down imagined dialogue between you, you'll better recognize when your authors are actually talking back to authors that they have read. So what does it mean to talk back? As we know, authors often develop their concepts by referring to previous authors. That is, authors often develop their own perspective in conversation. Sometimes the author is summarizing a previous author because their views are similar, and they're using the previous text to support their own views or to give authority to their own main points. But less experienced readers sometimes assume that that's most of what an author does when they refer to sources. However, you need to remember the ideas your author reports are not necessarily the ideas your author likes. Citation does not mean endorsement. There are a lot of examples of exactly what authors might be doing when they refer to previous sources other than looking for support. For example, they might use a source to provide informational background about a topic to kind of catch the reader up to the author's own starting point. In that case, the author is directly endorsing the views or the facts of the cited work. But with really similar framing words, an author might be introducing previous works to show this is how people used to think about this topic. But in fact, there is a new and different way of thinking that they are endorsing or that they are introducing.
For example, you may read your author saying, many authors agree that X is true. Just be aware that saying that many authors agree or that many people think something is not the same thing as saying that the author that you're reading also agrees. You know, as an example, if somebody said to you, my friend says that the problem set is due on Monday, that would not be the same thing as that person saying to you, the problem set is due on Monday, right? So this is another set of functions that you might create margin note codes for. For example, you might have some kind of margin note code for something that you believe is a argument the author is making versus something you believe that your author is citing as a counter argument to what they ultimately will endorse. So it's, for example, on this printed page of my script here, you might write in the margins, not find main argument. Yes, what troubles the author? Okay, so I've told you that it's complicated, but how do you know what's up when your author cites another author? Well, here are a few things that might help indicate to what use your author is putting that previous work. You can look for verbal cues that indicate what status the previous author has for your author. Like, was the previous author somebody who, as a personality, was very important outside of any specific instance of their thought? An indicator of that might be if your author uses their full name, that might mean that the previous author that is referred to is a famous expert of some kind. That still doesn't mean that your author likes the previous author, but it's an indication of something meaningful. So look for little phrases that might signal a turn that's being taken. For example, something like while previous research focused on, or we take issue with, or if your author is introducing another author's thoughts and they begin by saying, in a series of generalizations, so-and-so claims blah, 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 blah. Those are kinds of phrases that are used to signal skepticism and to communicate that skepticism to the reader. Here are some one-word examples. Does your author say that the source claims something is true or that he explains something is true? Does your author say that the source believed something or that she established something? Did they say something is true? That means that they believe it. Or did they observe something? If your author tells you that their source simply says something, that might be pretty neutral. Keep in mind also that your author may agree with their sources in general, but still take issue with them in some very specific ways. Lastly, think about what you're learning about the overall purpose of the article that you're reading, and think about your previewing and skimming and reading in other courses, and consider where might the cited source fit into the bigger logic of the argument. So there you go. If you were wondering what to note down, that was more than a dozen things to help you improve in your active reading, things to keep your eyes out for, and things to keep your pencils ready for. And we're past 13, past a baker's dozen, but I'm going to add one more. Principle number 15. Many students at U of T speak more than one language. So if you're one of those students, you might be wondering, what language should I be writing my notes in? Is it better to take notes strictly in English? If you're going to be doing any academic or professional writing in English, taking notes in English will go a long way to helping you improve your English, especially your English academic writing. To start with note writing, it's a great way to scaffold to the more complicated, more visible kind of writing that you'll do later on. But my answer isn't going to be one thing or another. My answer is the following. Take notes in your first language when it helps you to think. It's true that taking notes in English will go a long way to helping you improve your English, especially your English academic writing. But if you think you understand much more about the topic or about your reading than you can reproduce in English at this moment, then it's fine, maybe even preferable, to mix notes in your first language with notes in English. And if you're actually finding yourself very confused in certain classes on certain topics, then it's really okay to spend some time taking all your notes in your own first language rather than English. Even though you'll then be thinking in your own first language a lot, translating from the English of the classroom into your first language is still a great language exercise. For example, the matching and tracking that you have to do of the different vocabularies will be a good way of helping you to study and learn the English vocabulary that you need. When you're reading, the most important thing is whatever is helping you to pay attention and to understand. The second priority will be to learn and practice the English vocabulary that you're going to need when it's time to contribute to the conversation. Moving back and forth between languages can also be a great way to test yourself to see what is the difference between what you have understood about your topic and what you're able to express in English words about the topic. It's good to do that kind of self-assessment so that you can try to match up those levels a little bit later on. So that if you find that your ability to express yourself in your field is lagging a lot behind your ability to understand the reading or your topic in general, then you know what kind of work that you'll need to do to improve that English communication skill. People often do find it much easier to express more sophisticated ideas in their first language. And it'll be up to you to decide what your priority is, whether you need to be developing those more sophisticated ideas or whether you really need to be developing and practicing your communication skills in academic English. And you might take some time to reread passages just for the English, reading and reviewing just to kind of notice vocabulary and maybe look up certain words in the dictionaries or imagine how you might use those words in sentences. Take a little bit of extra time outside of your regular reading for courses time to read for language. Okay, there's one last practice or principle that I want to share, and that is find study buddies. Everyone misses things when they're taking notes in the class or in their readings. So that's a great reason to find a study group to work with so you can fill in each other's gaps and help each other develop ideas. But it's also just overall beneficial to mix work and play. Good luck with all your note taking. Thanks for watching.